I just want it to be a casual chat. These aren't anything formal, so. But you do know something about AsyncAPI, right? You're a qualified expert.
I have to study a little bit.
I mean, these are just these are just informal conversations. I'm not looking to do anything formal. I just kind of want to start getting people's opinions on different API specifications. We kind of widened it to the API specifications toolbox is what we call it now. And so I'm trying to, especially coming out of the Ask conference for OpenAPI, I'm trying to get Async in there, probably going to get Ben from JSON Schema to join and have a conversation and just see what we can do. Keep the conversation going. So, I am recording. Oh, you have a cat in the background.
I have 2 cats, actually.
Well, I had to close the door, otherwise my dog would jump up in this conversation. She's good at that. You should probably see your cats. Anyways, let's start the conversation with just what is async? Why did you do AsyncAPI? What was the story behind?
Well, I think you know already, but for those who are watching the recording. So I was at the time when I created AsyncAPI, I was working at Hitch, API changelog, together with Bruno Petro, and we were doing everything using OpenAPI. Everything was OpenAPI driven. We were offering a product driven on top of OpenAPI, let's say. So the changelog was leveraging OpenAPI, right? So we were always recommending, and we were convinced ourselves that OpenAPI or using Spec was the best way to work. But at the same time, we were creating our event-driven architecture internally for the changelog and for other stuff like the poll, the API system that we created, and everything was driven by events with RabbitMQ in the middle. And the more services we were creating, the more we realized, damn, we're repeating the same thing over and over, and there's no way to automate documentation, and there's no way to generate code, and the code was almost the same between services all the time, just tweaking some business logic. And we were like, maybe we can do something with OpenAPI and see if we can document these interactions with OpenAPI, even though it's not HTTP, it's not REST. But who knows? And we tried, we failed miserably. We failed because I was actually trying it myself, in my spare time, trying to document subscribe as a get operation and publish as a post. And I was telling people hey, I was telling the rest of the team, I know this is kind of hacky, but at least we have something which is better. And just whenever you see post, it's a publish. Whenever you get it, means you can subscribe.
But it doesn't help much if you have to explain to every developer what.
Well, we were a small team, so it was nice. At least we didn't have to maintain the documentation itself by hand. And if we wanted to improve something in the documentation side, we could just regenerate the documentation of each service automatically, and it would be spread over all the services documentation. Meanwhile, if we had to do it the other way, manually, we will have to go in each place and replace it manually. So at least we gained something. But and I was even planning to do this hack as well. Hey, go to the documentation generator and replace post with publish and get with subscribe, so we get proper documentation, and then so I don't have to explain anymore. But a request has a response, and and it was always showing there then we don't expect anything as a response. So yeah, it was a little bit weird. Then we tried to generate code for the services using Spec, but of course this was like, no, this is very out of hands. Like this is not a suitable way of doing it. So one day I was, actually I think it was at the time of API Days Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken. And I was there like thinking a lot, like maybe we should go and try it to clone OpenAPI. Clone not as in GitHub clone, but like copy and paste basically, and start tweaking the spec. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? And by the way, if it doesn't succeed, or if I end up thinking that this is too much, and I don't continue, at least I will have learned a lot of what the OpenAPI, so why not? And so I did my initial iteration, and I published it open source with no thinking that it was going to succeed or anything, just like I was always doing, open source by default. And yeah, I was speaking about it in conferences, but as a side note of my old talks, which the talks were about what was that, choreography? Choreography. I don't remember the name. Yeah, anyway, microservices or asynchronous microservices coordinated in a choreography, right? Yeah. Instead of the other approach, which I completely forgot the name now. And yeah, so the thing was like, I was doing these talks at conferences, and I was mentioning, look, by the way, I created this, but yeah, it was like a side note. I was thinking like, no, wait, nobody's gonna use this until I saw it published into the Slack Specs conference, Spec by Slack, I think it's the name of the conference, which Nico told me, like, hey man, your project is on the screen, it's on stage. And it's like, what? No way. Fuck, I have to clean the documentation. I have to fix some bugs here and there. And so it went crazy. Like, that's how it all started. Like, I was trying nothing. I was trying to use it myself. But at the time when I had something like usable, we had to quit the changelog and move to New Relic. So I really started using it heavily on my team, just on my team. Also, advocating for OpenAPI as well at the same time. So we're using Kafka. So
I think that's what caught my attention first, is that it was labeled as a sister specification to OpenAPI, and I'm very supportive of OpenAPI and been on that train since Swagger days. And I think it was early 2017 I'd started working with stream data and doing streaming APIs, and so I was purposely trying to push the boundaries of the OpenAPI spec with vendor extensions, and trying to think, how can we bend this to fit a diverse API toolbox that goes beyond just HTTP 1.1. I was looking at WebSockets, I was looking at server sent events, and similar to you. And then I had seen what you were doing. I had heard from Nico about the Slack defining theirs, and it was interesting to me, just the way you kind of presented it. I would say the way you did as a sister spec to OpenAPI is probably what caught my attention the most and got me thinking, oh yeah, this is building for the future. This is like building on what already is. Yeah. Where I had already experienced so much kind of confrontation, I would say, from RAML, from API Blueprint. I'd seen the great API spec wars. I'd survived the great API.
We all get tired of this.
And so I was like, the way you approached it, I thought was diplomatic and sensible, but then forward thinking. So I really think it represents how we should be building for the future. But
yeah,
I don't think that Open API is limiting in that way. It's like limiting us to HTTP 1.1. But how do you feel like, how do I want to say this question? Like, do you feel like Open API is kind of stagnated on just HTTP 1.1? Do you think the spec should continue to work together? JSON schema, I think, is the best example of it working together. So it feels like, because you could, Open API is an async API. Can you maybe explain that a little bit? That's, I think, a hard one. I think it's hard for people to understand that JSON schema is a portion of Open API and Async API.
Yeah,
but to really mess with their heads, Open API is also part of Async API. So can you explain the bindings part, I guess?
So, I'll go into that now, but just wanted to mention something like when you said like you did it like as a spec, and I was thinking like, oh, of course, because remember it was for my own benefit, right? Like I was using OpenAPI already. I didn't want to start defining the same things twice in a different spec that I could have invented from scratch, and then I will have to create everything from scratch, tooling and everything. But even if I don't create tooling and others do, I will have to define all the same information in different formats. No, I don't want to do that, right? So that's why it was on purpose. Like I don't want to do this twice, right? So it's already on the OpenAPI specification. I have the models defined there. I want to take the same model, the same schema, right, and define and use it on AsyncAPI on the new spec that I was creating, right? And also to the point that you said that that it was like looking forward, looking to the future, and it was diplomatic. Actually, if you go to the spec nowadays, it's still there. The first paragraph is a disclaimer saying that part of this content has been taken from the great work done by the folks at the OpenAPI initiative. I'm reading right now. Mainly because it's a great work, bold, and we want to keep as much compatibility as possible with the OpenAPI specification. So that's the first paragraph. Like, I wanted to make it. I wanted it to make it clear, like, we're not here to replace OpenAPI. We're not here to start a new war or anything. It's like, no. Keep using OpenAPI. Start using AsyncAPI if it makes sense to you. Let's use it together, right? So yeah, like what you were saying, like many people don't know that that, for instance, OpenAPI is composed of many other specs, not just JSON schema. But I will say that the most confusing one is that people don't realize that schemas, the schemas that you use in OpenAPI and in AsyncAPI are actually JSON schema definitions. So I'm not sure about OpenAPI now because I think they changed it. But anyway, like it's like we don't define this part of the spec. It's like I think there is a list of fields there, like an incomplete list of fields there, like just for reference in case you want to know. But I think both projects now point to JSON schema, like, hey, we're using draft. In our case, it's draft 7. They're using draft 8. We'll jump into draft 8 once the tooling is there. Right? Like now it's not there yet, so you don't want to make it change and then having to wait for the tooling, right? So yeah, that's one of the things. And the other thing that you said about OpenAPI being part of AsyncAPI, this is a work that we're doing at AsyncAPI, which is called bindings, like you said before. And I was first of all, let me clarify. At AsyncAPI, we're not attached to a specific protocol. It's like multi-protocol. It has to be because the event-driven space is diverse, and there's no clear winner on which protocol is winning or anything. So we had to be the multi-protocol by default. And one of these protocols is HTTP. So you can define what goes into a request and the response that you will expect, and or what goes into a response, and then what will you do as a request. It's the same thing, but inversing the order, right? And I was trying to define all this, the request details, response details, and everything there. And I was like, I'm doing OpenAPI. I'm doing OpenAPI here inside the binding. It's like, no, wait. Well, why don't I use just OpenAPI? Like, point to a specific chunk of OpenAPI, like the operation, for instance, the post operation, or the get operation, or the put operation, or whatever. To say that the HTTP binding is saying that this message that you're sending to a system is actually a post HTTP operation, and that you are going to expect this response. This is still being developed, and actually less than developed. It's still being investigated, and we're still playing with this. How request response definition there can fit inside the event-driven nature, let's say, of fire and forget, right? Sorry.
No worries.
So that's one of the parts. The other part is another binding that will be funny to investigate will be the GraphQL binding. Is another thing. Anyone could say that we're trying to take over all the specs, all API specs, but we're not. We want OpenAPI to keep existing. We want GraphQL to keep existing, and we will use their work as part of our work. We will reuse it. We will link it if you want. And you can use GraphQL, OpenAPI, and then have an AsyncAPI file that will be linking to all these definitions separately or embedded into the AsyncAPI file. That's up to you. But we're not looking to replace anything here. Otherwise, we will create our own language, and that's it. But there's no point, right? There's no point on starting a new war and telling people to migrate to a new language, offering the same features. Why? Right? It's like, why would I want to use a new language if you offer the same features, or even less, because it's not supported. It's not as supported as OpenAPI or GraphQL. So.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of why I believe in async is because I'm resistant to a lot. I'm still resistant, I would say, to the GraphQL, not GraphQL as a spec and not GraphQL as a tool. I'm resistant to GraphQL as an approach. Like, I would say their approach to selling GraphQL was very much coming for the throat of REST. And so I would say the opposite of your diplomatic approach, so I'm very supportive of GraphQL. GraphQL is actually a very interesting tool. I'm a database guy from way back, so I believe in it as a tool. I just don't like that approach to, hey, it's going to replace everything that came before it. So I think a diverse API toolbox is the future, and we have to find ways to kind of bridge these gaps and divides. And I see, I'm happy to be trying to understand what is that switch between, request response world and an event driven world, and how do you define your webhooks? Do you define them in OpenAPI? Do you define them in AsyncAPI? How do you define your in both? And so that's what I like about this front line. I'm not confused by it. I think that some people will be like, well, that's just, I don't know where to do it. Just tell me where to do it. But that's one of the things I like about it, is step up and help define the part that you're passionate about. And I would say with the bindings, right? Beyond GraphQL, you need help other people can step up and help define the bindings for other things. If Nats is your jam, like, and you believe in Nats, like, step up and like help us own the binding and help drive it forward. So
actually, the Nats team is actually helping us on defining the Nats binding. So
yeah, so that I think that's the huge opportunity right there is have each community kind of step up and help push forward this spec that helps bridge all those divides and helps us all move forward in a kind of in a way that we can orchestrate and choreograph, as you said. But the tooling plays a pretty critical role in that, and I think for me the OAI, this is where the OAI and AsyncAPI starts diverging somewhat, is a belief in the tooling. And can you talk a little bit about, like, what's your belief in AsyncAPI as a spec and as a open source entity, but also supporting and being opinionated on some of the tooling? What's your view on that?
So I think that tooling is I think tooling must be part of the initiative, like as opposed than what OpenAPI is doing, and the reason is look at for instance, I know it's a little bit different, and some people can argue that they're not the same, but look at GraphQL, for instance. So GraphQL came out with the spec and the tooling, right? So you had tools and you had the spec at the same time, or almost at the same time. At least when I first heard about it, we already had some tooling. So what happened then when I heard about them is I want to use GraphQL just to try it out. I need tooling, right? I'm not gonna build it myself because I'm gonna try it out, and I'm not gonna implement the whole spec. Trust me, I don't want to. You don't want to do that, right? Not even a simple one. You don't want to you don't want to implement a parser and all this stuff, right? And a validator. So the thing is, to me, is that it all starts there. It all starts with the user, and the user, the first thing that they will want to do is to use a tooling for a specific purpose. I want documentation. I want to generate code. I want to do whatever. But this I want to do never ends up saying I want to write an OpenAPI document or an AsyncAPI document. Nobody says that ever. It's like I want to use. I have to write it because I want to use this tool. But it's not that my end goal is not to write a document. If it's possible, I will avoid having to write myself. If there's a magic tool that will read my mind and do it for me, I will use that tool. So the end purpose is never writing the spec. And,
I think the best example of that is probably 70% of the people who use Swagger, so 2.0 of the OpenAPI spec, still think Swagger UI is the spec, is the thing. They don't even know about the spec. They see the documentation, Swagger UI, as the thing. They don't even know the separation or difference. So the tooling, the value generated by the tooling is what they see.
Yeah. So but then isn't it like this? I mean, think about it. Like, isn't it like Swagger UI, in the case of Swagger, is the thing, and the spec is just a configuration file for the spec, for the documentation? Think about it. It's like, it can be seen like this. I don't care about I don't care about the spec. I just care about the documentation that I want to render, which, I mean, I think it was the first thing they shipped, and they created the spec to render documentation, if I'm not mistaken. So that was the end goal. So the spec was just a way of saying, like, hey, here's all the configuration parameters that you have to send to us for us to be able to render the documentation properly. So, but the thing is that eventually then people say, like, hey, using this Swagger spec, we can also generate code. Oh, and we can also apply some rules in some forget the name, API, in some API. I'm thinking about proxies, but it's not proxies. I'm using too many proxies. API management tools, right? So in API management tools, you can input your Async API, your OpenAPI document or your Swagger document, and suddenly you can do more things with this configuration file, right? So so suddenly in overtime it becomes the thing. Like the thing is the spec. It's not, because there are many things around. But let's not forget, the user still doesn't want to read the spec. They want to use the tool, and I think over time people started thinking about their own shit. Like I'm working on the OpenAPI initiative, I'm working on Swagger, I'm working on AsyncAPI, I'm working on GraphQL, and I only care about myself and making my own job easier, right? And you should learn OpenAPI or you should learn AsyncAPI. It's your problem. I don't think so. It's our problem. I am on the side of writing AsyncAPI. I don't want everyone to learn how to write AsyncAPI. If possible, I will love to provide a tool that they don't have to even see it, right? So that will be perfect, right? But yeah, that's something that as a way to criticize ourselves. So like as a self-critic here is that we have to think more about the user. In this case, usually the developer. We have to think more about what they want and not what we want. It's very easy to become elitist here. I can say like, hey, we know a lot of AsyncAPI and we know how to do this. And you don't know how to use AsyncAPI, you have the problem, not me. No, that's not the case. I think it's the opposite, right? And so I think that's why we think that tooling is super important for the AsyncAPI initiative. Like the more tooling, we're still building the foundation, the basement tooling, like the parser, some generators for code and documentation and other stuff. And but we're still building this tooling to make it as good as possible. So if you create a company, or if you have a company and want to add support for your product, want to add AsyncAPI support on your product, you don't have to create a parser yourself, and you don't have to create other small tools yourself. You use our tools, and we will take care of maintaining it. And also, that's one side of the coin, which is a big one. But there's another one, which we've seen recently happening with OpenAPI, is the slow adoption of newer versions. So you tell people to migrate to version 3, and most of the times, because the user doesn't care about the spec, it's like, why? This is doing exactly what I need. Give me something new. Give me some business value. If I don't obtain a business value out of migrating to V3, I will not migrate. I don't care, right? Or unless suddenly nobody supports Swagger 2.0, okay, I'll have to migrate, because otherwise I cannot use any service. But the first ones to be slow at adopting V3 were exactly the providers. The providers were like, it's not our business. Our business is providing documentation, or providing code generation, or providing API management solutions. Swagger is just a tool for us.
Yeah.
If the tool brings us what we need, I don't care. I'm not going to invest a lot of time in migrating something that doesn't provide any value to me. So if you offer the parser, and you take care when designing the parser, and we can fail here, I'm aware. When designing the parser, you design it in a way that it's evolvable over time, and companies use it. You offer this to companies like, hey, you can use it and we'll maintain it. these companies will be able to just upgrade to the newer version of AsyncAPI parser, maybe do some tweak here and here, and suddenly they support the new version, right? So to me, the parser should be a facade between the spec and the product that we're offering.
Yeah,
you should talk to the spec the same way, and the spec should be able then to translate if it's version 2, version 3, version 4, whatever.
And the spec helps carry the load of switching from version to version. I mean, the providers or tooling people still have to do some work, but you're helping share the load with
exactly.
With it.
They will still have to do some work, and especially these tools like the ones that like Stoplight, for instance. They generate an output, an OpenAPI output, right? Out of the design process, you design an output. So if you want to input this output to another place, of course there will be a dependency of which version you're using. But if you're just using, like for instance, if you're using just the spec first and then from there generating everything, if all the tooling that makes this generation process, like the docs, like the code and everything, is using a parser that is well designed and maintained, the work that this tooling will need to do to adapt to a new version, it's minimum. It's minimum as in probably there will be new features that didn't exist in previous version. You have to add support for that. That's okay.
But that's the new value. That's the
new value.
Yeah.
That's the new value. But if something is just rearranged, so the business value is still the same, but rearranged in a breaking change way, and you create a breaking change, you're not offering any value.
Yeah.
But suddenly is incompatible, and you have a new major version.
Yeah.
You don't want people to upgrade because of that, because they're not going to upgrade, of course.
Yeah. They may do that once. They may do that once, and then they're not going to do it again because that's work for no reason. Yeah.
And we're trying to. We're now designing we're now working on the first version of the AsyncAPI parser. I'm still not happy I'm still not happy about the design of the facade, of the API of the parser, let's say, because it's not evolvable in my opinion, because you still have to go and follow the structure of the spec. Like for instance, just as an example, in JavaScript, for instance, you do parser.info.title to get the title of the spec, right, of the document. But that's coupled to the structure of the spec. It should instead be something like parser.document.info or .info, whatever. And then this method should know where to go if it's info.title. Imagine we move title outside info.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So then it's broken, or we rename info and suddenly it's something else. Then it's broken. And your code is going to be coupled to the structure of the spec. So it should be more like you need to capture the user intent. It's like, I want to obtain the title of this document. I don't care where it is located in the spec. Just give me
give me the title.
Give me the title, and that's it. And give me the version of the document. I don't care. I don't care what it is, and I don't care how is it called in the spec. And just give me all the messages. Just give me all the channels. Just give me all the schemas. I don't know where they are. I don't know where they are located in the spec. You have to deal. It's responsibility of the parser to deal with this. If it's version 2, it's going to be here. If it's version 3, it's going to be there. So this complexity will be handled on the parser, and it's a lot of complexity. And we don't want people to rework this whole thing every time we launch a breaking change or we launch a new version. Right. So that's
that makes a lot of sense. I really think it's one of the major pain points of OAI from 2.0 to 3.0 that still hasn't been solved. I mean, I think I'm going to have some of these conversations with folks about that problem, because I have major enterprise customers who are on Swagger 2.0, and they need a hard sell from me to convince them to go to 3.0. And so I'm going to have some of these these API spec conversations around that as well. So,
but you see, you're into APIs. I mean, I don't know anyone who's more into APIs than you, and they still need to hard sell to you that you migrate to version 3.
Yeah,
because there's a little bit of added value compared to Swagger 2, but it's not a huge value. It was just mainly they're renaming the spec and changing some things here and there. And, but people don't care about these things. It's just
it's that key value, and I honestly don't have, beyond centralization, the components library in 3.0. I don't have a whole lot of upsell, for people, so I need to work on that. There is value in there, but a lot of it is brought by tooling that makes it easier. So I have to kind of find that bridge between tooling and the spec as well. So
I think you have callbacks and webhooks that weren't on the Swagger 2. I think, which it's a great value. But you need more, and that's my point. You need more stuff to convince people, in my opinion.
Well, thank you for doing this today. I'm going to keep trying to keep these around 30 minutes because I don't think people tend to like to listen to things. At least I don't. I tend to tune out after about 30 minutes. But I'm going to keep going around to different people in the community, and then I'm going to bring you back into some conversations as well, because right now I'm just kind of doing one-on-one. But I would love to get you and Daryl on the same conversation. You and Mike Ralphson, stuff like that. So I'll be doing more of these, I guess. So
that will be. Thank you for proposing this in the first place. But I will be happy to chat with them, because it's not the first time we chat about it. we'll be feeling like we're repeating all the same things all the time, But it's great. It's great, and I don't think many people will watch until the end this video, because people don't care.
I think once people get a view into how things work and they start getting a little bit more awareness, a few people care. But I don't expect that. That's the thing I think people don't see about API evangelism. What I do is I'm not looking for that big, massive audience. I'm not looking for constant growth in what I do. I'm an evangelist. I'm looking to convert you to my religion, person by person, one by one. And so that's what this is about. It's just, hopefully we'll get one more convert to our religion, Fran, and the world will be a better place for it. So we don't need mass audiences. So
no, I was just kidding. Just to link back to what I was saying, right? People don't care about the spec. It's but people who care about the specs, they will be for sure interested in watching it.
Well, and I, for the record, I do handwrite specs without any tools or without any end goal or end value. I find it soothing. I find it relaxing. It helps me go to sleep at night. But I also have a lot of problems, so it's all right.
But I also have a life.
Cool. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate this. I'll let you get back to your day, but this was cool. I appreciate you just be willing to do this last minute. It was cool.
My pleasure, man.
Alrighty. Well, we'll resume next week with our regular conversations, and we'll keep things going.
Cool, man. Thanks.
All right. Cheers. Have a good one, boss.
Bye.